Looking back, it's hard for me to pinpoint exactly when I sensed something was wrong with Lily. It wasn't like she suddenly flipped a switch and turned into a stranger. No, it was more like subtle shifts, tiny fractures forming over time in the image of the life I thought we shared. At first, I told myself it was nothing. People go through phases, don't they? But bit by bit, the oddities added up until I couldn't brush them off any longer. Lily, who used to be the last one out of bed, often bleary-eyed until noon on weekends, was suddenly up at the crack of dawn, slipping out from under the covers without a sound. I'd wake to hear the bathroom door softly click shut and find her in front of the mirror, putting on makeup like she was headed to some runway show. She used to barely glance at her reflection, much less spend this much time on makeup. And it wasn't just the makeup. Her wardrobe seemed to change overnight. Suddenly, the closet filled up with designer labels. She'd say they were all on clearance or picked up at some sample sale. I wanted to believe her, and I did at first. But something about the way she'd strut around in those new clothes, a smug little smile on her face, didn't sit right with me. Then, there was the distance between us, especially in the bedroom. I remember one night after a grueling day, hoping just to hold her, to feel some closeness. She was on the couch, scrolling through her phone, and I slipped my arms around her. "Not now," she muttered, shrugging me off like I was just some annoying distraction. That wasn't the only time. It became her default response, with excuses like, "I'm exhausted, long day," or "maybe later." But later never seemed to come. Each time she pushed me away, it felt like she was punching me right in the gut. Then strange gifts began appearing, small things that felt out of place in our world. I noticed a pricey bottle of wine on the counter one night and thought maybe she'd picked it up for something special. But when I asked, she just shrugged. It was from work, a little bonus. Then it was a collection of lavender-scented candles, which I knew she hated, and then a new bracelet with a small charm. I couldn't get that bracelet out of my head. I'd seen one just like it on the wrist of Nathan Sinclair's secretary at an office party. I didn't say anything at the time, but the thought lingered, gnawing at me. Evenings used to mean something to us. We'd cook together, eat dinner at the table, talk about our day. Now she either ate alone or picked up takeout. One night she came home late, way past dinner. I was waiting at the kitchen table, but she barely looked at me. "Nathan kept me late," she said, slipping off her heels and heading to the bedroom without a second glance. The way she said his name sent a chill down my spine. Then there was her phone. She'd always been relaxed about it, leaving it lying around, but now it was glued to her hand, like she couldn't bear to be away from it. She even took it with her to the bathroom. Once I caught a quick glimpse of her screen, a row of heart emojis in a chat, but she locked it before I could see more. When I asked, she just laughed it off. "Oh, that's just Maya being goofy." But the way she looked away told me it wasn't Maya. At first, I didn't know what to do with the suspicion gnawing at me. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, and I hated the idea of starting a fight over something that could just be in my head. So I talked to my buddy Derek. We grabbed a few beers and I poured everything out to him. "Man, I think you're overthinking it," Derek said, leaning back in his chair. "She's always been honest with you. Maybe it's just work stress." I wanted his words to ease my mind, but they didn't. He couldn't see the growing chasm between us, this silent distance stretching further every day. The breaking point came when Lily told me she was heading out to meet up with her friend Maya. Her tone seemed too rehearsed, too casual. After she left, I waited a bit, then called Maya. "Hey, it's Alex. Just wanted to check if Lily got there okay." There was an awkward pause before Maya answered, Yeah, we hung out last week. Not tonight." I hung up without another word. My chest felt like it was filled with concrete. I knew then that I wasn't imagining things. Lily had been lying to me. I didn't confront her right away. I needed time to process the wreckage of what was happening to my life. Instead, I suggested we go to the upcoming corporate party together, hoping it might shed light on things or confirm what I was beginning to dread. Her reaction was telling. "Are you sure you want to go?" she asked, her tone a little too light. "It's not mandatory or anything." The hesitation in her voice confirmed it. She didn't want me there. And it wasn't just about the party. It was about us. What else was she hiding? The night of the party finally arrived, and I felt it in my gut. Something was about to unravel. Lily spent nearly 2 hours in the bathroom, longer than she ever had. When she finally emerged, I hardly recognized her. She wore a black dress that clung to her, a dress I'd never seen before. It wasn't just sexy, it was intentional. Screamed, "Look at me." "New dress?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She smiled without looking at me, brushing past to grab her purse. "Got it on sale," she replied. That had become her favorite line. Anytime something new appeared, a bracelet here, heels there. But this wasn't just a sale dress. It was chosen for someone, and I knew deep down it wasn't me. The drive to the event was silent, a knot forming in my stomach. Lily, on the other hand, looked serene, even excited, tapping her nails along to the radio. When we arrived, she immediately drifted toward Nathan. I should have expected it, but it still hit me like a punch in the ribs. I watched as she stood a little too close to him, laughing at each one of his stupid jokes, ones he didn't even seem to believe were funny. Nathan had this smug, overconfident charm that dripped off him like cologne. He touched her shoulder casually, but his hand lingered just a second too long, making my blood boil. I tried to keep it together, making small talk with coworkers, but my eyes kept drifting toward the two of them. No matter where I went, she was always right by his side, sipping wine and giving him her full attention. At one point, I leaned in, hoping to cut into their private world. "You look amazing tonight," I murmured, desperate for a glimmer of connection. Lily flashed me a quick smile, but her eyes went right back to Nathan. "Thanks," she replied, her tone indifferent, as if she were speaking to some distant acquaintance, not her husband. The tension was suffocating, wrapping tighter around me with each passing moment. I made my way to the bar, desperate for a drink to dull the ache building in my chest. As I sipped my whiskey, I noticed Lily and Nathan slipping off into a side hallway. Lily had mumbled something about checking the stage setup for the performance, but I knew that was just an excuse. This wasn't about work. It was about something else entirely. Before I even had time to second-guess myself, I found my legs moving, trailing them down the dimly lit hallway, every nerve in my body humming with tension. My heart pounded so hard I felt it in my throat, but I couldn't turn back. I needed to know. In the narrow, shadowed corridor, their voices echoed softly ahead, leading me to a closed door. I leaned in, pressing my ear to the wood, straining to hear. "You shouldn't," Lily murmured, her tone teasing and flirtatious. Nathan's laugh was low and confident. "You always say that." Then, unmistakably, I heard the sound of a kiss, soft, slow, and deliberate. My fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms, and I felt the sting of Bro Alec's skin. For a moment, I was frozen, waves of betrayal crashing over me. My hand shook as I pulled out my phone and took a few photos through the narrow gap in the doorframe. The images weren't much, just shadows, silhouettes, but they were enough. Enough to confirm everything I'd been dreading. I stood there a moment longer, their muffled laughter still echoing, then turned and made my way back to the main hall, my legs heavy as lead. The noise of the party, the laughter, the clinking glasses, all felt muted, like I was underwater, barely connected to the world around me. A few minutes later, Lily reappeared at my side, her cheeks flushed, lipstick slightly smudged. She shot me a quick, casual smile as if nothing had happened. "Where'd you disappear to?" she asked, picking up a drink. I shrugged, keeping my voice steady. "Just needed some fresh air." She seemed content with that answer, unaware of how close to suffocating our relationship had become. The drive home was steeped in silence. Lily was far too cheerful, humming along with the radio and tapping her fingers on the steering wheel, as though she hadn't just spent the evening betraying her husband. I sat next to her, gripping my phone in my pocket, the photos fresh on the screen. "Did you enjoy the party?" she asked, giving me a smile that was a little too practiced. I stared out the window, my jaw clenched. It was interesting to watch certain people. For just a split second, her smile wavered, but she quickly recovered. Deep down, I think she knew the game was up, but we drove on in silence, the weight of the unspo Alex pressing down like a stone between us. When we pulled into the driveway, she leaned over and kissed my cheek, a hollow, meaningless gesture. "Good night," she whispered, slipping out of the car and heading inside without a second glance. I stayed in the driver's seat for a moment, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. There was no turning back now. The cracks had shattered the illusion we'd been living in, leaving nothing but the sharp, unforgiving truth behind. And I wasn't about to let her walk away from it unscathed. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone screen. The photos of Lily and Nathan were right there, cold, undeniable proof of her betrayal. I expected anger, maybe even devastation, but what I felt was emptiness, like something inside me had bro Alex beyond repair. Then an idea surfaced, something unexpected, a spark in the wreckage. Ruby, Lily's younger sister, Ruby, was wild, unpredictable. Everything Lily had lost over the years. She and I had always gotten along, maybe too well at times. I remembered the way she'd look at me during family gatherings, her gaze lingering just a little too long, a knowing smile hovering at the edges. Back then, I'd brushed it off as harmless, but now it felt like an opportunity. I shot her a text. "Hey, you free for coffee sometime? I could use some company." She replied almost instantly, "Tomorrow? My treat." The following afternoon, we met at a small cafe downtown. Ruby walked in wearing a tight red sweater that hugged her curves, her blonde hair loosely pulled into a messy bun. The second she spotted me, her face lit up with that playful, flirtatious smile I hadn't seen in what felt like ages. "Look at you," she said, pulling me into a hug that lingered just a second longer than it should have. "It's been too long, Alex. You look good." "Thanks," I murmured, feeling the warmth of her body against mine. "You do too." We grabbed our coffees and settled into a corner booth. The conversation was effortless, maybe too effortless. Ruby was lively, charming, and most importantly, she made me feel seen in a way Lily hadn't in months. Her compliments reminded me of the man I used to feel like, back before everything with Lily began to crumble. "Honestly," she said, leaning across the table with a knowing smile, "I always thought you deserved better than what Lily gives you." I could have stopped things there, redirected the conversation to safer topics, but I didn't. I let her words wrap around me, a warm balm soothing the ache that Lily's indifference had left behind. When we finished our coffee, neither of us seemed ready to say goodbye. Ruby suggested we grab dinner, and I didn't hesitate. Dinner led to a couple of glasses of wine, and before I knew it, we were sitting together on my couch, the space between us shrinking with each heartbeat. "This is nice," she whispered, her hand brushing against mine. "Being here with you." I knew where things were headed, and for once, I wasn't about to stop it. I leaned in, and she met me halfway, our lips finding each other as if we'd been waiting for this moment all along. That night, we didn't speak about Lily or Nathan or anything else that might have mattered. It was just Ruby and me, wrapped in each other, finding a strange kind of freedom in the rebellion. As dawn broke, I lay next to her, staring at the ceiling. I knew what we'd done was wrong, but there wasn't a single shred of regret. Ruby stirred beside me, stretching before looking over at me with a lazy smile. "Good morning," she whispered. "Morning," I replied, brushing a stray hair from her face. We didn't discuss what it meant or where it would lead. We both understood that this wasn't the end of things. In the days that followed, Ruby and I found ourselves in a dangerous rhythm. We'd meet on WeAlexts under the guise of catching up, but the connection between us was far from innocent. We shared intimate messages and traded photos that left no doubt about our intentions. And every time I saved one of her photos to my phone, I made sure they were visible. A part of me wanted Lily to find them. Hell, a part of me wanted her to know exactly what I was doing. It didn't take long before Ruby and I began snapping photos together. Candid shots of us curled up on the couch, her head resting on my chest, our hands intertwined like some picture-perfect couple. I left those photos on my phone on purpose, knowing full well that Lily had a habit of snooping. I wanted her to stumble upon them. I was almost itching to see the look on her face when she did. Each time Ruby came over, it felt like I was taking back pieces of myself that Lily had tried to strip away. We'd laugh, drink wine, and make love with a reckless abandon I hadn't felt in years. With Ruby, I could finally let go, be raw, be angry, be whatever I needed to be. I knew I was playing with fire, but at that point I couldn't care less. If my life with Lily was already a pile of ashes, I was damn well ready to stoke the flames and make sure she burned with me. This wasn't just an affair. This was revenge. And it felt damn good. It was inevitable that she'd find out. I knew that, and honestly, a part of me wanted it to happen. Secrets only stay thrilling for so long before they're begging to be exposed, loud and ugly. That's exactly how it happened one morning, almost as if fate had set it up. I'd left my phone on the kitchen table, a slip-up that wasn't exactly accidental. Lily was in the kitchen, going through the motions of being the good wife, pouring her morning coffee as if our lives weren't in tatters. I sat at the counter, focused on an article on my laptop, pretending not to notice the way her gaze kept sliding toward my phone. Then it buzzed. I didn't look up. I already knew who it was, Ruby, and I knew exactly what the message said. I'd read it plenty of times before. Can't wait for tonight. I saw Lily freeze, her hand hovering mid-pour, her body going rigid as her eyes fixed on the phone. She set her coffee down and, without hesitation, picked up my phone, unlocking it with a practiced swipe. The silence was deafening as her breathing grew shallow, her eyes scanning the stream of messages. Every text was a small dagger to the reality she'd clung to. There were photos of Ruby and me, nestled together in my apartment, her head on my chest. The messages ranged from playful to explicit, leaving nothing to the imagination. She slammed the phone down so hard on the counter that I thought it might shatter. "How could you?" she spat, her voice shaking with rage. "With my sister? Are you out of your mind, Alex?" I stayed calm, didn't even flinch. I'd waited for this moment, and now that it was here, I felt almost serene. "And how could you?" I replied, locking eyes with her. "Betray me with Nathan?" For a split second, her anger vanished, replaced by a flash of guilt. Then, just as quickly, the rage returned, but this time it was tinged with desperation. "That was a mistake," she muttered, her voice lower, almost pleading. I was confused. I let out a bitter laugh. Confused? So why did it last for months? She opened her mouth to reply but couldn't find the words. She knew I'd cornered her, and watching her squirm was more satisfying than I ever imagined. All her excuses, every lie, each cold shoulder. It was all laid out, nowhere left for her to hide. Then, breaking the tension, heels clicked on the hardwood. Ruby appeared in the doorway, dressed in one of those form-fitting outfits Lily had always hated. She leaned against the doorframe with a smirk that said she was savoring this just as much as I was. "This is your fault?" Ruby drawled, her voice laced with venom. "You never appreciated Alex the way he deserved." Lily's face crumpled, her defenses shattering. She looked at me, tears pooling in her eyes, her whole body racked with sobs. I should have felt something. Guilt, pity, something. But all I felt was a cold, unflinching satisfaction. "I know I made a mistake," Lily whispered, barely audible. "But I don't want to lose you, Alex. Please." She reached for me, hands trembling, clinging to the idea that somehow this could be salvaged. "It's too late," I said, my voice as empty as I felt inside. "You already lost me." She sank into a chair, her face in her hands, bro Alex in front of me. The woman I once loved was now just a hollow shell, and whatever part of me had loved her was long gone, burned up in the flames of betrayal. There was no turning back. When Lily suggested we still go to her family's annual dinner, I almost laughed in her face. She was grasping at any remnant of normalcy, thinking that sitting around a dinner table would somehow patch up the wreckage between us. But I agreed not to mend things, but because I saw this dinner as the perfect stage for the grand finale, a chance to let everything unravel right in front of the people she cared about most. She spent hours getting ready that day, layering makeup over the evidence of her tears. When she came downstairs, she gave me a tentative smile, clinging to the hope that maybe this dinner could change things. "I know things have been tough," she said softly, smoothing down her dress. "But thank you for coming. It really means a lot." I simply nodded, grabbing the keys. "Yeah," I muttered. "Sure." The drive was quiet, her forced small talk filling the space between us. I barely engaged, my mind elsewhere, rehearsing the moment I'd finally dropped the bomb. She kept glancing over at me, looking for some sign that I might still care, but that part of me had already vanished. The only thing left was the part of me ready to wreck her, publicly and irreversibly. We arrived at her parents' house, the tension hanging over us like a storm cloud. Her parents greeted us warmly, blissfully unaware of the train wreck waiting to unfold in their dining room. Her mom kissed my cheek. Her dad gave me a hearty pat on the shoulder. Ruby was there, too, meeting my gaze with a little knowing smile, fully aware of the spectacle that was about to unfold. Dinner began like any other family gathering, with casual chatter floating around the table, work, vacations, the usual trivialities. Lily sat stiffly beside me, forcing a smile, her hands fidgeting in her lap. Across from us, Ruby sipped her wine, smirking every time our eyes met. I played along, laughing at her dad's awful jokes, making polite conversation with her mother, waiting for the right moment to strike. That moment arrived halfway through dinner. The conversation around the table had quieted down, everyone absorbed in their plates or drinks. I set down my fork, leaned back, and looked around at each of them. "I've been thinking about something," I began casually, like I was just making idle conversation. "What do you think is harder to forgive? Cheating with your boss or with your sister?" The words shattered the room like a grenade. Forks clattered, glasses froze mid-air, and every face turned toward me in shock. Lily's face went pale, her eyes widening in sheer panic. "Alex," she whispered, a warning barely escaping her lips, but it was too late. Her parents exchanged confused glances, her father narrowing his eyes. "What the hell are you talking about?" he demanded, looking between Lily and me. With a steady hand, I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and tapped the screen a few times before holding it up for everyone to see. There, as plain as day, were the photos. Lily and Nathan, close, locked in a kiss. Lily's mother gasped, her face twisting in shock and hurt. "Oh my God," she breathed. Her father's expression turned to one of disgust, his mouth working soundlessly as he tried to process what he was seeing. "How could you do this, Lily?" her mother seethed, her voice low but sharp. "With his boss? What were you thinking?" Lily was unraveling, scrambling for words, each one a feeble attempt to brush it off. "It wasn't like that. It was just flirting. It didn't mean anything." I let out a harsh, bitter laugh that sliced through her excuses. "Flirting? That's one hell of a way to flirt, don't you think?" Before she could reply, Ruby leaned in, swirling her wine as if she was watching her favorite drama unfold on TV. "And what about my relationship with Alex?" she added, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. "Did that mean nothing?" Lily whipped her head toward Ruby, her face a mix of disbelief and betrayal. You, she choked, her voice barely a whisper. Ruby just shrugged, her tone as cold as ice. "Don't look so shocked. You didn't want him, so I took him. Simple as that." The room erupted in chaos. Lily's mother, now caught between anger and heartbreak, burst into frantic sobs. "You've brought shame to this family," she yelled, her voice breaking. Her father slammed his fist on the table, silverware rattling. "Enough!" he barked, rising from his seat, his face a deep shade of red. "I can't believe you would do something like this. With his boss, no less." Lily was sobbing, trying to stammer out explanations that didn't matter anymore. The damage was beyond repair. Her father stormed out, muttering about how she'd embarrassed the family, while her mother slumped in her chair, burying her face in her hands. Ruby, meanwhile, leaned back, looking thoroughly pleased, while I sat still, watching the entire mess unfold with a sense of cold satisfaction. This wasn't just revenge, it was justice. The morning after that disaster of a dinner, I knew there was no going back. Whatever we'd had was beyond salvaging. I filed for divorce the very next day, without any long conversations or pleas for understanding. It was a clean, cold decision. Lily tried everything, begging, pleading, crying, even throwing tantrums. She'd sit on the edge of the bed, tears streaking down her face, whispering, "Please, Alex, we can fix this. I know I messed up, but we can still make it work." But I was done. Her words were empty, washing over me without effect, like rain against a window. I made sure my lawyer was the best money could buy. I wasn't just ending our marriage, I was securing my future. This wasn't about moving on with as little mess as possible. I wanted to walk away with as much as I could and leave her with nothing. She deserved that much after everything she'd done. When the court hearing arrived, Lily looked like a shadow of herself. Pale, gaunt, clinging to the few scraps of dignity she had left. But with all the evidence on my side, the photos, the messages, the calls, the judge didn't need much convincing. The ruling went overwhelmingly in my favor, giving me the better share of our assets. Lily tried to fight it, but her tears couldn't drown out the truth. The look on her face when the verdict was handed down was unforgettable. She looked lost, unable to comprehend that she was losing everything. As the final divorce papers were signed, Nathan Sinclair, the man she'd ruined our marriage for, pulled away from her like a coward. Word got back to me that Nathan had hinted to her that sticking around at the company might hurt his image. In other words, her job was gone too. With me, her job and her reputation gone, Lily was left adrift. Her friends, who probably had known about her affair but hadn't dared tell me, gradually faded away. Even Maya, her supposed best friend, gently suggested that Lily should distance herself from the family to avoid further embarrassment. Then there was her mother. Last I heard, they weren't speaking anymore. Something about bringing disgrace to the family being the final straw. But I didn't bother to find out any more than that. As for me, I wasted no time in moving on. I left the house we'd shared and found a new place in the city. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. A clean slate free from the remnants of a failed marriage. Ruby and I kept seeing each other for a while. I won't claim it was some epic love story. It was easy, uncomplicated, exactly what I needed. We'd spend wee Alex together, go out, and lose ourselves in the simplicity of it all. She filled the void Lily had left behind, and I felt no guilt for it. Not a shred. Sometimes, I wondered if Ruby felt more for me than I did for her. But I didn't dwell on it. For once, I was enjoying the freedom of living life on my terms, without the lies or manipulation that had haunted my marriage. A few weeks after the divorce was finalized, Derek threw a party. A small gathering, just close friends, beer, and music. I showed up late, as usual, and found him holding court by the kitchen with a drink in hand. When he saw me, he broke into a grin and pulled me into a bear hug. "Alex, man, how's the new life treating you?" I raised my beer, clinking it against his. "Better than ever." We spent most of the night on the balcony, staring out at the city lights, lost in the hum of laughter and clinking glasses. At some point, Derek nudged my shoulder. "You doing okay?" he asked. I smiled back at him. A genuine smile, something I hadn't felt in a long time. "Yeah," I said, raising my bottle in a toast. "I really think I am." We toasted to fresh starts, and for the first time in years, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. The past was behind me, and as I looked out over the lights of the city, I knew that whatever came next, it would be on my terms. And that was all I needed.